Te koto te whānau o Auckland Unitarian. Te koto nā manahiri. No mai, hire mai ki tene whare karakia a te atua. Te koto, te tato katoa. My welcoming words are called In Sweet Company by Margaret Wolf. We sit together and I tell you things. Still, silent, unbored, naked things that only my God has heard me say. You do not cluck your tongue at me or roll your eyes or split my heart into 1,000 pieces with words that have little to do with me. You do not turn away because you cannot bear to see your own unclaimed light shining in my eyes. You stay with me in the dark. You urge me into being. You make room in your heart for my voice. You rejoice in my joy. And through it all, you stand unbound by everything but the still small voice within you. I see my future self in you, just enough to risk moving beyond the familiar, just enough to leave the familiar in the past where it belongs. I breathe you in and I breathe you out in one luxurious and contented sigh. In sweet company, I'm home at last. This Sunday, we celebrate having enough humility to come together to light a candle, sing songs, reflect on shared wisdom, trusting we are in a safe place to be our naked selves. May the light from this chalice and from all that we share here generate new insights, new warmth of feeling, new responses to the call of life that beckons us forever forward. In all humility, we cherish ancient wisdom from the past and new discoveries emerging in the present. We look for further enlightenment in the future, and we seek a share in bringing it to birth. Please join me in the words of our covenant in your order of service. Love is the doctrine of this church, the quest for truth and service is its prayer, to dwell together in peace, to seek knowledge and freedom, to serve humankind in fellowship, to the end that all shall grow in harmony. Thus do we covenant with each other and with our God. Please stand if able to sing Spirit of Life. My reading this morning is by Lynn Ungar, our wonderful UU poet and minister. The universe does not revolve around you. The stars and planets spinning through the ballroom of space dance with one another quite outside your small life. You cannot hold gravity or seasons, even air and water inevitably evade your grasp. Why not, then, let go? You could move through time like a shark through water, neither restless nor ceasing, absorbed in and absorbing the native element. Why pretend you can do otherwise? The world comes in at every pore, mixes in your blood before breath releases into the world again. Did you think the fragile boundary of your skin could build a wall? Listen, every molecule is humming its particular pitch. Of course, you are a symphony. Whose tune do you think the planets are singing as they dance? So I took on an impossible task, dealing with you humility. A year before jumping from Anglicanism to Unitarianism, I exchanged pulpits for 3 months with the priest in an Anglican church in Barcelona. It was not easy for either me or the congregation, for they were of the evangelical branch of Anglicanism. They were quite certain of their conservative Christian beliefs and were none too happy that their vicar had foisted a heretic from New Zealand upon them. Turns out they have Google in Spain, too. While I was respectful of where they were in their faith journey, I did not back off from sharing my progressive views in either my preaching or teaching. There was a mixed response. Some were gobsmacked. I had opened up a whole new world of understanding for them. Others just muttered the Catalan equivalent of codswallop under their breath. I was a threat to their certainty. Their faith was hard enough to cling to without me dinging it with difficult questions. What ultimately won them over were my children's homilies. They found them entertaining and were unaware I was chipping away at their certainty. On my last Sunday, I preached on the parable of the Pharisee and the tax collector praying in the temple as my coup de grace. I chose it because Jesus sets an exquisite spiritual trap for his listeners. For we are the third character in this story. Here's the story from the Gospel of Luke. Jesus told this parable to some who trusted in themselves that they were righteous and regarded others with contempt. 2 men went up to the temple to pray, one a Pharisee and the other a tax collector. The Pharisee, standing by himself, was praying thus: God, I thank you that I'm not like other people, thieves, rogues, adulterers, or even like this tax collector. I fast twice a week. I give 1/10 of all my income. But the tax collector, standing far off, would not even look up to heaven, but was beating his breast, saying, God, be merciful to me, a sinner. I tell you, this man went down to his home justified rather than the other. For all who exalt themselves will be humbled, but all who humble themselves will be exalted.
The Pharisee Jesus presents is a straw man. In his arrogance and self-justification, he is easy to see as the one being condemned, as he gives thanks for his faithfulness and for not being like the tax collector. But in truth, we are the ones condemned. The trap is sprung as soon as we think, thank God I'm not like the Pharisee. We can be thankful to be Unitarians, but we should avoid the temptation to also think the spirit of life that we are humble. Being a Pharisee has come to mean being a hypocrite. But were they all that bad? The Pharisees began as a slave movement around 150 BCE. Their purpose and way of life was to maintain a level of purity over and against the dominant Hellenist culture as a way of preserving Jewish traditions. The Pharisees were the equivalent of good elders, stewards, or deacons. They would be the ones sitting on church boards. They would be the ones providing significant financial support for the work of the congregation. They were deeply devoted to their faith tradition. In contrast, the Pharisees, the tax collectors, were, to coin a phrase, deplorable. They were despised and hated, and not without cause. They were the instruments of the economic oppression by the Roman Empire. They were collaborators and ritually unclean. They weren't simply misunderstood. They were on the wrong side, theologically, politically, and economically. For the Pharisee in the parable, the tax collector was the lowest form of life and, understandably, a tempting target for thanking God he was not like them. However, when we as the audience choose to identify with the tax collector so we can eat with and hang out with Jesus, who liked to party with them, who should we be identifying with today? Drug-dealing gang members? Or sex traffickers? Readily come to mind. That certainly gives one pause. Given our preference, we would like to be righteous like the Pharisee and still enjoy table fellowship with Jesus, but that is not to be unless we share the tax collector's self-understanding. The tax collector comes to God in humility. Theologian Frederick Buechner describes humility as not thinking ourselves any worse or better than we are. Any better or worse than we are. The tax collector comes before God and acknowledges he is a slime ball. He doesn't try to justify it. He doesn't even promise to repent by quitting his job. What he does is ask for mercy. Mercy is how we translate the Hebrew word for steadfast kindness. He trusts that God's steadfast kindness includes even the likes of him. It is that love that allows him to stand at the temple and say essentially, I may be a tax collector, God, but I am your tax collector. It is love that defines him, not what he does or doesn't do. When I'm preparing couples for marriage, I tell them the moment they will know their marriage will last. It is when they stop saying to the other, I love you because, and start saying, I love you in spite of. We don't deserve this kind of steadfast kindness. We simply bask in But having the humility to be the object of steadfast kindness without earning it is easier said than done. For as back day this old familiar song says, and sing along if you know it, "Oh Lord, it's hard to be humble when you're perfect in every way. I can't wait to look in the mirror because I get better looking. To know me is to love me. I must be a hell of a man. Oh Lord, it's hard to be humble, but I'm doing the best I can." Henry Augustus Rowland, a professor of physics at Johns Hopkins University, tried the best he could. He was once called as an expert witness at a trial. During cross-examination, a lawyer demanded, "What are your qualifications to be an expert witness in this case?" Normally, the modest and retiring the professor replied quietly, "I am the greatest living expert on the subject under discussion." Later, a friend well acquainted with Rowland's disposition expressed surprise at the professor's uncharacteristic answer. Rowland explained, "Well, what did you expect me to say? I was under oath." It may be hard to be humble, but it is the one essential requirement to be one with humanity, as we are all going to end up humus. We are the ground of being from which a beloved community sprouts. Humility understands that the delights, pains, and needs of others are as important as our own. When we are humble, we laugh at our self-importance and sometimes even set it aside. We can see our own faults and the strengths of others, and we recognize how much we have been given unearned. Humility makes us aware of our personal limitations and the limitations of humanity. We acknowledge that there is much we do not know, that certainty is impossible, and that our understandings of the world are provisional at best. Humility brings us up short, opening us up to growth and love. Here's an example from history. A rider came across some soldiers trying to move a heavy log without success. The corporal was standing by as the men struggled. The rider asked the corporal why he wasn't helping. The corporal replied, "I am the corporal. I give orders." The rider dismounted, went up and stood by the soldiers, and as they were lifting the log, he helped them. With his help, the log got moved. The rider quietly mounted his horse and went to the corporal and said, "The next time your men need help, send for the commander-in-chief." After he left, the corporal and his men found out the rider was George Washington. Ultimately, humility gives the gift to see the divine spark in the face of one another. And even in our own, when we look in the mirror, something that is not possible when we are judging others or comparing ourselves with them. An elderly woman and her little grandson, whose face was sprinkled with bright freckles, spent the day at the zoo. Children were waiting in line to get their cheeks painted by a local artist. "You've got so many freckles, there's no place to paint," a girl in the line said to the little fellow. Embarrassed, the little boy dropped his head. His grandmother knelt down next to him. "I love your freckles. When I was a little girl, I always wanted freckles," she said, while tracing her finger across the child's cheek. "Freckles are beautiful." The boy looked up. "Really?" "Of course," said the grandmother. "Why, just name one thing prettier than freckles." The little boy thought for a moment, peered intensely into his grandma's face, and softly whispered, "Wrinkles." Difference can be scary to community. The fear is they can fracture. Often the defensive response is to suppress our differences, either by unstated community standards or by individual self-suppression in order to fit in. But paving over our differences deprives the community of its innate richness that each member contributes. A better response is humility. Humility sees the beauty in freckles and wrinkles. Humility creates an environment that is safe for us to be who we are and know steadfast kindness. Such an environment eschews debating one another and encourages listening respectfully to each other's spiritual journey for the wisdom they have to offer. It is in such an environment that even the heart of the Pharisee can be transformed. And so, perhaps even the Unitarians can be too. While it's hard for UUs to be humble, we are doing the best that we can. I invite you to stand if able to sing our closing hymn, which we'll sing through twice.
Please join me in the words for Extinguishing the Chalice. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again.
My closing words are from Maureen Killeran's prayer, Celtic Lorica. I had to look up Lorica, and it means like a casing, like something around a butterfly or a shell around certain items. May hope's light guard us and keep cynicism from our hearts
May the energy of laughter build endurance for the dark times of our lives. May creativity's vision grant the possibility of seeing old relationships with new eyes. May the oil of healing keep us from angers, hardness, or despair. May the mantle of humility give courage to admit when we are wrong. May compassion's lube weave in us the discipline to forgive. May patience help us bear in mind that ours is not the only scale of time. May the flame of justice be a beacon for the choices we must make. May peace be ever in us and sustain our stressful days.